From the outside looking in, and even sometimes from within, the Death Stranding series sure appears to be about walking places without dropping packages and occasionally building structures for the benefit of making these deliveries more easily. This is not an incorrect assessment of the mechanical functions on display. This is an open-world action role-playing sort of game, yes, but it's also a game of logistics. This is about a job needing to get done. To say it isn't that would be a lie. Most of the time in this game is spent doing deliveries, and that might sound boring because, well, it is boring. It's work. At times, Death Stranding 1 and 2 have more in common with Mud Runner, Snow Runner, and the litany of blue-collar job simulators that have taken over the internet in recent years than it does something like Red Dead, Cyberpunk, or Fallout. But that doesn't mean that it lacks all similarities to those games. While traversal through this beautiful, austere world can be reason enough to play, the structure of these games can be tedious and frustrating, at times begging the question, who is this for? I'd guess that it's certainly not for children with short attention spans, but is it for adults? Who wants to get home from a day at work and start another job? The answer, unsurprisingly, is that these games are for Hideo Kojima, by Hideo Kojima. And sometimes, that's what art needs to be. Cathartic and personal. At its core, the Death Stranding series is about struggle, and how at the end of that struggle is meaning, provided one works towards helping others and not just the self. It actually reminds me quite a bit of the Kevin Costner cult hit The Postman, a single man uniting the scattered remains of civilization into something more. It is to this game's credit that the supporting cast of characters inspires such care and curiosity, and it is that curiosity of them and the surrounding world that motivates the player's journey across Mexico and Australia. Hideo Kojima's games have always been filled with characters whose names sounded silly or provocative, even within the confines of the worlds he creates. But the characters in the Death Stranding series seem to take on names that describe their purpose, not unlike medieval naming conventions such as Weaver, Thatcher, Smith, or Shoemaker. What this does is ground the narrative and make it more believable. Preposterous, right? Wrong. Even if everything else seems upside down, what we can latch onto is that Sam Porter Bridges, the player's avatar, is a man named Sam that is in fact a porter, or someone employed to carry luggage, and he was affiliated with the Bridges Organization, a company synonymous with what is left of the United States government, the UCA. On his Australian walkabout, Sam meets even more people with practical names, some based off their location, like having North or South for a surname. Others, like Rainey, are descriptive names seemingly given long after birth. She's a sufferer of dooms, a condition that connects humans with time and space beyond perception and beyond death. Her dooms manifest as timefall, the liquid time that falls from the sky and ages everything it touches, only her rain turns back time. She seems to be a reference to the weather maiden myths in Japanese culture, most recently seen in Makoto Shinkai's Weathering with You. The main character Sam, played by action legend Norman Reedus, is a special type of doom sufferer called a repatriate. He can die, sure, but he never stays dead. Pretty useful power for a video game protagonist. These are just two ways that dooms can manifest, and many people with the condition end up with names that describe their abilities. Dead Man, Heart Man, Die Hard Man. They sound like superheroes, but with the way they're framed in the narrative, it sounds more like a sickness or curse. Doom's sufferers, as they are known, even have a history of being ostracized by what's left of society, a bit like the mutants in the X-Men series. I think it's very interesting and telling that the ones with the most power are also the ones considered to be suffering. One of the core concepts along the path to enlightenment in Buddhism is accepting suffering as a part of life. I don't know for sure if the Death Stranding games are necessarily Buddhist in their philosophy, but the concept of nirvana does come up. One thing that is certainly present is the idea of Ha and Ka, the ancient Egyptian interpretation of the mind and the body. The theme of how these two are related and can also be separated is a core philosophy of the series. It's interpreted in quite a few different ways as well. Before moving on, I want to note that I don't believe it's Kojima's intention to just make weird names. Kojima knows his audience is international, Western and Eastern. He doesn't want to make a game that's different depending on where players come from. He wants to make something equally strange for everyone. And strange is certainly on display here. Though I believe it would be incorrect to call them horror games, Death Stranding 1 and 2 certainly live in that headspace aesthetically. In this universe, an extinction event has decimated and continues to eat away at a dwindling population of humans, forced to live indoors and underground because the surface of the earth is covered in what the fiction calls beached things, or BTs. These BTs were once human, their spirits pushed back from the other side, now unable to pass on from Sam's plane of existence, bound to the earth with metaphysical umbilical cords. Thus, these beached things are dead and stranded. Get it? The player uses the Odradek device on Sam's shoulder to play Ghostbusters and pinpoint the direction and distance of the closest BT. If the player isn't paying attention or they're rushing through an area, they will learn very quickly that BTs must be respected. They can be avoided as long as players hold their breath while moving in their presence, but even then, it might be best to give them a wide berth. When they sense you, not only can they pull you into a pool of tar to immobilize you, but when a BT crosses over whatever planes of existence to come into our world, they take terrifying, monstrous forms. Soon after the player's first interactions with BTs, they start to acquire tools to deal with these spirits. The first are blood grenades, then guns, and eventually the blood boomerang, a more useful version of the umbilical cutter from the first game. It is more than possible to kill a BT, or I should say banish it, as apparently they can't die because they're already dead. In any case, by the end of the long boss-like encounter, the game begs the question, why bother? What do we actually get out of killing this thing? It ends up being much less painful for Sam and the BT to just set it free to return where it came from. It's because of this that I believe this series is incorrectly labeled as an Amazon Prime delivery game or walking simulator. That is certainly a large part of this experience, but Sam wears many different hats. He certainly starts the game as a delivery man and can take on any number of building projects, but I would argue that these are simply jobs he does to get by. Not to mention, vehicles are unlocked so early that I truly don't understand the walking sim tag at all. Most of my time in both games was spent driving around. In Death Stranding 2, there are two main vehicle types, a trike and a truck. The trike, introduced at the end of the Mexico intro segment, enables Sam to cover ground quickly and also grab any stray packages off the ground. It is incredibly adaptable to steep inclines, even riding horizontally on nearly vertical surfaces with surprising ease. After a few hours in Australia, players unlock the truck, which is fantastic for hauling cargo. Initially, it doesn't seem as well suited for gathering, as Sam has to get out of his seat to grab parcels, but the truck allows for not just onboard weapons, but gathering tools as well. Driving this thing around almost feels like vacuuming up packages. At some point, players will likely feel a sort of disconnect. There are other porters in this world delivering packages and other players contributing to the network of structures. I rarely had to build anything in this game. Someone had almost always built a generator just where and when I needed one, or a road to my exact destination. The few times I placed structures ended up getting me quite a few likes, but I never really felt the need to build. So where then can players find purpose and meaning in Death Stranding when half the job is done for you? Well, let's pinpoint Sam's underlying purpose in Death Stranding.
It's her, isn't it?
Sam's true calling seems to be as an exorcist. When I played the first game, it kind of reminded me of a very serious Pac-Man, but I assured myself that I was stupid and it was just me. But a playable Pac-Man Easter egg in the second game basically confirms it. In Pac-Man, the player is constantly avoiding ghosts, struggling to survive, but with the right tools, he can take on the ghosts and send them home. Death Stranding is just an overcomplicated version of that in the best way, the Kojima way. There have been a couple games released in the last month that tout a Pac-Man inspiration, but I'd argue that Death Stranding 2 is the only one that truly honors the core concept of the original game. Open-world Pac-Man might not be everyone's vibe. This game definitely is not for everyone, but art never needed to be for everyone. It used to be okay if art just touched one person. They liked the work, bought it, and took it home to enjoy. It's only in our modern sensibilities that we demand art be for everyone. Giving approval to one person is enough to change everything. Everyone has an expertise that they can offer to the collective. The sort of social credit system the Death Stranding games are built on facilitate both Sam and his new connections improving their lives together. The more players put into each relationship, the more they can learn about the world, but also the more tools available in their toolbox. This manifests as the widest array of weapons, gadgets, and hardware that Kojima has ever put into a game. There are so many different ways to play Death Stranding 2 that it's staggering. I spent 50 hours playing this game and I saw plenty, but I know there are things that other people found that I didn't. I've seen them, and I'm pretty confident there's probably quite a bit that still remains uncovered at this time. Throughout the game, Sam works to expand the chiral network, linking up all the scattered survivors with a sort of controlled time and space Wi-Fi lattice that covers large swaths of land. What is it? Well, much like the internet collected all of our knowledge in a seismic shift to human civilization, the chiral network, among other things, posits a utility that not only collects our data, but can manifest it through printing for endless use anywhere on the chiral network. How does it work? Who the hell knows? This gift of the chiral network is comparable to the fire of Prometheus, which gifted men with the knowledge of tools that they used to build civilization. Of course, this also begs the question, who is Prometheus in the Death Stranding universe? What god created this mess? Even after beating the game, I still don't know, but I'm sure Hideo does. In the game, companion character and impeccable dancer Dollman draws the comparison between not just the Promethean myth and their current plight, but also Moby Dick and the struggle of Captain Ahab. He references the multicultural crew of the Pequod, Ahab's ship, as a potential metaphor for the American experiment. Many cultures all coming together in pursuit of the same goal. This ends up mirroring not just the crew of the Magellan, but the whole human race, clinging together as extinction looms everywhere. Tarman is a doctor, scientist, and the captain of the Magellan, the player's floating fortress that can slip in and out of the tar at will. His likeness is that of George Miller, the director of the Happy Feet and Babe films. Oh yeah, and he's the creative force behind the entire Mad Max franchise also. Clearly a huge influence on Kojima for this project. Tarman lost both his son and his hand to a whale-like creature that spawned BTs, a very similar story to Ahab's quest for revenge against the white whale. Dahlman notes this struggle is meant to represent the human condition, doing our best to stand up to the natural world. That isn't the only parallel between Death Stranding 2 and other fiction that the puppet draws. Sam has gifted copies of both Moby Dick and Frankenstein. The obvious connection with the latter is Deadman, a character with the likeness of celebrated weirdo Guillermo del Toro. Deadman is a patchwork man, much like the original depiction of Frankenstein's monster, an inhuman creature with a surprisingly human mind. There's even a discussion of the history of Frankenstein author Mary Shelley, the creator of the creator. Dahlman references a film from before the Death Stranding destroyed civilization about Mary Shelley starring Elle Fanning, who happens to play a character in Death Stranding 2 and has been fully scanned into the game like the rest of the amazing cast and celebrity cameos. To talk about an actor that is part of the team creating the work from within the work itself is next level weird, but almost expected considering Kojima's track record of breaking the fourth wall. It's worth mentioning that though the cast for Death Stranding 2 is extensive, the most interesting part is the majority of cameos beyond the core cast are all creatives. Many film directors, musicians, a painter, a fashion designer, an acrobat, even a famous VTuber makes an appearance. They're not here for star power, they're clearly Kojima's friends and creative influences, and the care he's taken to put these real people into his game can be felt. There's not a single repeated NPC in these games. They're all real people scanned in. Troy Baker returns as Higgs, upping the ante every time he's on screen. I've always said that it's not the protagonist but the antagonist that makes a great story. Higgs is the chaotic glue that holds the entire plot of this game together. He is twisted and terrible, and I absolutely love him. This is perhaps one of the best characters Troy Baker has ever played, and Kojima letting both Troy's voice and likeness steal the spotlight every chance he gets is the greatest gift a director can give to any actor, but especially one who has spent his entire career wearing the faces of others. Another book on Sam's shelf is The Voyage of the Beagle, a nonfiction documentation of Charles Darwin's travels around the globe. This predates his work on the origin of the species, upon which all evolutionary biology is based. Dahlman references how Darwin was actually obsessed with geology and tectonic movement, and how it would lead to creating new environments for life. It ends up paralleling the world of the game, where tar currents are moving the land and plate gates are opening up a new avenue of travel, not unlike a land bridge such as the Bering Strait. Both the known life of Earth and the chiral creatures migrating from beyond our understanding are learning to coexist in an environment that is new for all involved. Even the versions of America, Mexico, and Australia we see in this series are so far removed from the versions we know, pelted day after day with timefall rain until the environment is unrecognizable. I'm not sure how that explains the huge Olympus Mons-style mountain peak dead in the middle of the Australian outback. Perhaps that's the tectonic plates in the tar, or maybe it's just Hideo Kojima wanting more environment diversity in his game. Sometimes it's easy to forget this is just a video game, as grandiose a project as it is. Kojima's projects tend to have that effect. He's known for his games having hours and hours of passive cinematics, but this game is pretty light on passive storytelling when compared to the Metal Gear Solid games. Most of this game is spent playing. When I think about that notion and pair it with the wild ideas Kojima was able to convey, in my opinion wilder than anything he ever did for Konami, I truly think this is his magnum opus, his greatest work. I'll also say that I think he's far from done, so that title may be temporary, but isn't even that sort of exciting? Hideo is doing the best work of his career, and he's just getting started. Thanks for watching. If you like this review, please subscribe to Hackathon today. This video actually marks my channel being active for 1 year, and I can't thank all of you enough for engaging with me. I know I haven't made any waves on YouTube, but that's not enough to stop this train. I love games and all sorts of entertainment, movies, TV, music, books. I want to cover it all. I work full-time, so my attention is definitely divided, but I'm committed to bringing you reviews that are as impartial as possible. If that sounds good to you, all I ask is that you just keep watching. Thanks again.